Sometimes the most dangerous decisions we make are the ones that look exactly like success.
Josh Miller used to believe that stability was something you earned quietly, the way interest accumulates in a savings account, if you're patient enough not to touch it. He believed in showing up early, leaving late, and not drawing unnecessary attention to himself. He believed that if you didn't ask for too much, life would eventually stop testing you. For nearly 12 years, his world had been logistics, routes, warehouses, delays, weather reports, phone calls that came too late at night to be good news. He worked for a national logistics company, headquartered in downtown Chicago, one of those corporations whose logo was everywhere, but whose decisions were made far above the streets, in offices with glass walls and muted carpet. Josh had started there after a smaller firm collapsed during an economic downturn. He remembered the fear of that period vividly, the way instability had crept into his chest like a cold he couldn't shake. When this company hired him, he promised himself he wouldn't take security for granted again. He became dependable to a fault. He solved problems before they became visible. He absorbed stress so others wouldn't have to. People trusted him. They relied on him. They rarely rewarded him. At home, Josh's life was quieter, but no less demanding. He and Laura had built something careful together, a modest house in Naperville, 2 children who assumed adulthood meant answers, not questions. Laura worked part-time, balancing income with the invisible labor of holding a family together. They didn't live extravagantly. They lived cautiously. Conversations about money were measured, practical, sometimes postponed until the kids were asleep. Josh told himself he wasn't ambitious, but each time a younger coworker received a promotion he had once hoped for, he felt something shift inside him. Not resentment, but doubt. A quiet wondering about whether loyalty still meant anything at all. The promotion arrived without ceremony, a vague calendar invitation, a neutral conference room, a manager whose tone suggested everything had already been decided. Josh listened as his contributions were summarized, his reliability praised, his long-term value acknowledged. When the word promotion was finally spoken, it landed gently, almost cautiously, as if it might startle him if delivered too loudly. Operations Strategy Lead. The title felt heavy in his mouth. It sounded adult, permanent, like a word that could anchor a future. On the train ride home, Josh stared at his reflection in the darkened window and tried to imagine himself as someone who belonged to that title. He thought of his father, who had worked the same job for 30 years without ever being promoted, without ever being laid off. He thought of how proud his father had been of consistency. That night, Laura listened quietly as Josh explained the offer. She smiled, but her smile was thoughtful, restrained. "Are you excited?" she asked. Josh hesitated. "I think I'm relieved." She nodded. Relief isn't a bad thing, but it's not the same as safety. They opened a bottle of wine they'd been saving for a milestone. The kids celebrated because celebration was contagious. For one evening, the future felt lighter than it had in years. Josh didn't mention the details he didn't fully understand yet. The relocation expectations, the compensation structure, the leadership agreement. He told himself those were logistics, his area of expertise. Change arrived disguised as improvement. The company encouraged him to be closer to headquarters. It wasn't mandatory, but it was framed as alignment,
as commitment. Josh understood unspoken expectations well enough not to challenge them. They moved into a smaller apartment nearer the city. The rent was higher than he was comfortable admitting, but he rationalized it easily. Temporary, he told himself. This is how transitions work. The car followed, then the wardrobe, then the lunches and dinners that weren't optional if you wanted to stay visible. His salary increased, but the structure shifted. Overtime disappeared. Bonuses became theoretical, tied to metrics that moved just as they came within reach. Josh noticed the imbalance, but he assumed this was normal. This was leadership. This was adulthood. At night, Laura noticed he was present without being there. He answered questions a beat too late. He stared at his phone without reading it.
"You're not sleeping," she said one evening. "I'm fine," he replied, though he no longer knew what fine meant. The numbers stopped making sense. Josh sat at the kitchen table long after everyone else had gone to bed, scrolling through their bank account with a growing sense of unease. More income, less room, less margin, less forgiveness. He opened a spreadsheet and began tracking everything more closely. The exercise didn't calm him. It confirmed what he had been avoiding. The promotion had not increased his freedom. It had narrowed it.
He told himself the bonuses would fix it, that the next quarter would bring relief, that stability was just one adjustment away. But beneath those thoughts, another voice had begun whispering, persistent and unwelcome. What if this is permanent? The leadership agreement resurfaced almost by accident. An HR review, a casual mention, a clause explained in a tone that suggested Josh should already be familiar with it. If he left voluntarily within a certain time frame, he would owe back relocation assistance, training costs, and incentive advances. The number felt unreal. Josh nodded, thanked them, and walked back to his desk with the strange sensation of watching himself from a distance. He had signed the document. He remembered that much. He had trusted the context, the praise, the implied goodwill. That night, he lay awake beside Laura, staring at the ceiling while traffic murmured outside. He considered waking her, then decided against it. He wasn't ready to say the words out loud. He wasn't ready to hear them spoken back to him. I didn't do anything reckless, he thought. So why does this feel like punishment? Time became heavier after that. Josh stopped imagining alternatives. He stopped thinking about other jobs, other cities, other versions of himself. The idea of leaving felt impossible, not emotionally, but mathematically. At work, he was respected. At home, he was distant. Laura tried to reach him gently. "You don't have to carry this alone," she said once. "I know," Josh replied, though he didn't believe it. The children noticed the shift too, though they didn't have language for it. "Why are you always tired?" his daughter asked one evening. Josh smiled and shrugged. "That's just work." But he knew it wasn't just work. It was fear. Quiet, persistent fear. The layoff arrived during a restructuring announcement that felt strangely merciful in its simplicity. A meeting, prepared language, sympathetic expressions. Josh listened without interrupting, nodding at the appropriate moments. When it was over, he packed his things carefully, deliberately, as if rushing might confirm that he had lost control. Negotiations followed. The company reduced the repayment amount, framing it as accommodation. Josh accepted because he had no leverage left. When he stepped outside the building for the last time, the city moved on around him, indifferent and loud. He stood there longer than necessary, holding a box of personal items that suddenly felt absurdly small. He didn't feel anger. He felt emptied.
Telling Laura was harder than losing the job. She listened as Josh explained everything, the clause, the debt, the fear he hadn't voiced. When he finished, the silence stretched between them, heavy but unbroken. "So what now?" she asked quietly. Josh swallowed. "Now we slow down. We tell the truth. We rebuild." She nodded, eyes steady. "I wish you'd trusted me sooner." "I didn't want to scare you," he said. She reached for his hand. "You don't scare me. You disappear when you're afraid."
The years that followed were humbler. They moved again. They downsized. Josh found work that paid less but demanded less of his soul. The recovery wasn't dramatic. It was gradual, imperfect, and deeply human. Josh learned to read contracts differently. He learned to ask questions that made rooms uncomfortable. He learned that success without flexibility was just another form of debt. The most dangerous financial decisions rarely look reckless. They arrive wrapped in praise and trust and the promise of stability. Most of all, he learned that the most dangerous financial decisions don't look dangerous at all. And by the time you understand their cost, you've already paid most of it. Thank you for watching. Keep following us and stay engaged.